Last night, All Elite Wrestling held their Double or Nothing pay-per-view event live from Daly's Place in front of a crowd of over 5,000 people for the first time since the pandemic began. The crowd was raucous. The pay-per-view was great. We had some amazing matches, and I'm going to break it down all right here in this video. Before we get started, though, remember to like, share, and subscribe. So we kick off the event with Hangman Adam Page taking on the Machine Brian Cage, and the crowd was just electric for this opener. Honestly, you probably could have put any match in here and it would have been great given the crowd reaction, but I think Brian Cage versus Hangman Adam Page was the perfect match for this because you have two stars who you really need to build up, and you have a lot of different storylines you're building with, and they're just two people who are going to go out there and have a great match. And that was the story of the match. They came out there, they were hard-hitting. Going into the match, Brian Cage said that he did not want any members of Team Taz interfering in the match because Hangman called him out and says, you can't win without members of Team Taz. You can't win without your friends coming out and helping you every single time. So do it like a man. Do it one-on-one. And that's what Brian Cage chose to do. So we can get to the finishing sequence of the match, and as Brian Cage looks like he's in a little bit of trouble, you see Ricky Starks and Team Taz come out and try to help Brian Cage. They were able to distract Hangman Page, but then Brian Cage was thrown the title, the FTW World title, by Ricky Starks, telling him, hit Adam Page, hit him, win the match. And Brian Cage instead chose to throw the title away and tell them to fuck off, which, when you ask me, amazing way to build tension in between Team Taz. We've seen this tension with Brian Cage building up for a while. He was yelling at them earlier and a few months ago. He was yelling at them at this match, during this match when they came out. So there's a lot of tension there. Finishing sequence of the match was Hangman Adam Page was able to hit Brian Cage with the buckshot lariat for the 1-2-3. Hangman Adam Page wins in 12 minutes. Next, we had the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, taking on Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. And just to note, the crowd reaction that Moxley got with Wild Thing and this crowd was amazing. He was, I think, one of the most over people overall on the show, and that's saying a lot because almost everybody was over. But Moxley got one of, I think, the biggest crowd reaction of anybody on this pay-per-view, and they went out there and they had a classic match, hard hitting. There was cheating, there was shenanigans on both sides because we know that Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston are kind of, they're baby faces, but they're willing to play dirty, and they did just that. They brought up the shoes. We saw spots where Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston were hitting the Young Bucks with the sneakers. We saw spots where the Young Bucks, they took out that bottle of spray and they beat Jon Moxley over the head with it when the ref was distracted. It cut him open, and it kind of was the story of the rest of the match. But the biggest takeaway from this match was when Jon Moxley was hit with multiple super kicks, multiple moves. He kicked out at one. There was a spot where he kicked out at one, and you saw this huge babyface fire. You saw this. It was reminiscent of Hulkamania, like when he's hulking up. That was Jon Moxley's version of hulking up, and it was insane. The crowd was into it. The announcers were into it. Everybody was into it. The match ended with the Young Bucks going in and hurting Eddie Kingston's knee. They focused him on his knee, and that was able to distract and, incapacitate Kingston to the point where they were able to hit a bunch of V-triggers on Jon Moxley, who was, again, not going out without a fight. It took a lot to beat him, but Jon Moxley ended up getting pinned after being brutalized for basically the last, few minutes of the match. The Young Bucks retained their World Tag Team titles in 21 minutes. Up next, we had the Casino Battle Royale, an over-the-top rope battle royal where the winner gets a shot at the AEW World Championship. We saw many familiar faces. Story of the match was Christian Cage comes out first. He withstood the onslaught of all the other cards, all the other entrances, and he was able to go up until the end. Now, a lot of people were wondering who's going to be the Joker card, who's going to be the big surprise. Some people said it might be someone who's already on the roster. There was a theory going around that it might be Hangman Adam Page, leading up to a match with him and Omega at All Out. A lot of people also thought it could have been Daniel Bryan, aka Bryan Danielson, maybe someone from New Japan. You were kind of right on the last one if you guessed it was someone from New Japan, because it was Lio Rush. Yes, Lio Rush. He left WWE, as we know, I believe last year, and now he's made his AEW debut. He was the Joker card, the last entrant in this match, and there were really only 3 people that you would think would have won this match. It was either going to be Christian Cage, whoever the Joker was, which ended up being Lio Rush, because we know the Joker kind of is that wild card, and Jungle Boy. And Jungle Boy was honestly a distant third in, I think, the odds, and a distant third in what a lot of people thought. But in the end, it was Christian Cage and Jungle Boy in the finishing sequence, and we saw that they were fighting on the ringside area. They were fighting around, really close to the ropes. And in the end, Jungle Boy was able to haul Christian out, throw him out, and Jungle Boy will get his first shot at an AEW World Championship since he's been in the company. And that's a big deal, because many think he's going to be a future star. He's going to be a future face of this company, and he is. Really interesting note, at the end when Jungle Boy was celebrating with Jurassic Express, we saw Christian Cage actually come back into the ring and congratulate Jungle Boy and telling him that make the most of your opportunity, kid. But Jungle Boy wins the Casino Battle Royale in 23 minutes. Up next, we had the American Dream, Cody Rhodes, taking on Anthony Ogogo. And this was a match that, it was very controversial. Some people liked it, some people didn't. Especially the build going up to it. There was a little bit of controversy over, the very typical American versus the foreign heel type gimmick. But I think they ended up making it work. This was a really good match, good psychology, and Cody was, over as well. Anthony Ogogo had a great match. One of the big stories of the match was Cody Rhodes focusing on the eye of Ogogo, really honing in on that, and that became a big thing in the match. Anthony Ogogo, they were saying he can't see out of one eye, and then that kind of affected his play, his performance in this match. But honestly, a much better match than people thought. Cody Rhodes was able to hit the 1-2-3 on Anthony Ogogo for the win in 10:55. But I think Anthony Ogogo he showed a lot of promise in his match. He showed that not only can he work, but he also understands the business. He understands ring psychology, and I think he's going to be here for years to come. Up next, we had Nero taking on the Murder Hawk monster, Lance Archer, for the TNT Championship. We, of course, know Miro won the TNT title 2 weeks ago by defeating Darby Allin for it. And the build going up to this match was really interesting, because you didn't see a lot leading up to it. We just kind of found out, Lance Archer is going to be going one-on-one with Miro at the pay-per-view. Okay. But then at FanFest the day before, there was video released of Miro actually blindsiding and punching Jake Roberts, which really played into this match. And, going in, we saw Lance Archer come out alone, which he hasn't done since Jake Roberts has been there. Jake Roberts was apparently too injured to come by, and so it was Lance Archer by himself against Miro, and these two beat the living crap out of each other. It was insane. They beat each other through barricades. They were hitting each other into the turnbuckle. They were hitting big moves, spine busters, everything. And it was the big hoss battle that people wanted to see. And in the closing sequence of the match, we saw Jake Roberts actually come out with a bag that had a snake in it. Now, it didn't really have a snake in it, but he came out with the bag, and as he's taking out the snake, to distract Miro actually brings Jake Roberts into the ring and takes the bag with the snake in it. And he chucks the bag with the snake in it all the way across the entrance ramp. And that probably got one of the biggest reactions of the night, because you saw this evil heel, and Miro just doesn't care who he hurts, doesn't care what he hurts. He's just there to deliver pain and to win. In the end, Lance Archer got caught with the game over, and it was by technical submission he lost the match. So by that I mean Aubrey Edwards saw that Archer was in the move, he couldn't defend himself, and he apparently had passed out. So apparently that's a way to lose a match. But that being said, it was a good match. I think we might see a rematch or two, because I see this feud probably extending, maybe even into the summer or possibly even All Out. Up next, we had Hikaru Shida, the AEW Women's World Champion, taking on the Good Doctor Britt Baker, DMD, in a match for the AEW Women's World Championship. And boy, was this great. We saw Hikaru Shida is the longest running champion in AEW's history. We saw Britt Baker, who is possibly the fastest rising star in AEW, go head to head. And this was a classic match. They were hard hitting throughout. They were really good sound technical wrestling as well. Go back and watch the match and you'll see. And what I thought was, a lot of people had, big expectations for this match, given the two people who were involved. Hikaru Shida, of course, the longest running champion. And Britt Baker, who a lot of people are thinking most improved wrestler over the past year. And she showed why she belongs here. I think Britt Baker, her ring psychology was great. Her facial expressions were amazing. Hikaru Shida did a great job of playing the face in trouble. But at no point did she look like she was weak. And that's important, because that's how you keep her at the same level, at the same high level. So in the end, we saw a few roll-ups at the end. Britt Baker tried to roll up Hikaru Shida, wasn't able to get the 3, but by reversing the roll-up, Britt Baker was able to lock in the lockjaw and made Hikaru Shida, the champion for over a year, tap out to win the AEW Women's World Championship in 1720. This was a great match, and I think we can all say that we are all excited to see the era of DMD. Up next in a tag team matchup, we had the team of Scorpio Sky and All Ego Ethan Page taking on Darby Allin and Sting. Yes, Sting wrestling his first match, in-ring match rather, since 2015, and boy did he come to play. We saw early on in the match, Sting took a suplex on the announce ramp, or on the entrance ramp, and he didn't budge. He just got right back up and he attacked Scorpio Sky, and then we saw Sting do a crossbody. Yes, a 61-year-old man do a crossbody. I don't care who you are. I don't care how safe someone catches you. That is an accomplishment. And look, Sting, he wasn't in the match for the bulk of it, but what we saw from him was that, man, for 61, that dude can still go. He can still go. He is still probably, one of the better, in-ring performers there was on the night. And that's saying a lot. Like, I thought Sting did great. But so that was one story of the match. The other story, I think, was Darby Allin and Ethan Page. There were so many spots where they were calling back to their rivalry on the indie scene. There were so many spots where they were calling back to their history, and we saw that there was almost legitimate heat with both of them. Like you saw the vitriol that they had for each other. Like, this wasn't just about, Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page versus Sting and Darby Allin. This was about Darby Allin versus Ethan Page. So there's this great spot where Darby Allin was in some sort of a submission hold by Scorpio Sky, and then Sting had, I believe, the Scorpion Deathlock on Ethan Page, and they are right next to each other. Darby Allin and Ethan Page are both in submissions, face to face, trying not to tap out, but at the same time, they're slapping each other. They are beating each other up. There is legitimate hatred there, and that's what it's all about. This is how you build another feud going off of this, because I think we're going to see Darby Allin and Ethan Page go into, like, kind of a like possibly like a blood feud type of thing. Like, we could see very similar dynamic between what we saw with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in WWE. Hopefully it's going to turn out better and they don't, go back to the well too often. But finishing sequence of the match, Sting was able to hit Scorpion Death Drop on Scorpio Sky for the win in 12:30. Next, we have the triple threat match for the AEW World Championship. It was champion Kenny Omega defending his title against the Bastard Pack and freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy. And we saw Kenny Omega come out, make his entrance, and it was grand. We saw him just decorated with all of his titles: the TNA belt, the Impact World Championship, the AAA Mega title, and the AEW World Championship. He looked like $1 million. He looked like a champion, this belt collector that he's been built up to be. And the match was just 30 minutes of non-stop action. We saw Orange Cassidy get thrown out early. There was an early exchange between Kenny Omega and Pac, And then Orange Cassidy came up out of nowhere, started doing some amazing moves. You know, he did his DDT, he did his dive to the outside. One big spot that I remember that honestly was probably like one of my favorites of the whole night was when Omega is trying to do a back suplex from the top rope on Orange Cassidy, and he's trying to get leverage. Orange Cassidy, just trying to get leverage on Cassidy's arms. So Orange Cassidy just puts his fingers in his pockets and just locks it in, so Omega can't do anything with him. But that was great. Finishing sequence of the match did see Don Callis get involved and some shenanigans by Kenny Omega. Pac had Cassidy in the brutalizer, and as Cassidy is about to possibly tap, Kenny Omega just hits the referee because he was hitting Pac, trying to get him to break this hold, and it wasn't working. So Kenny Omega double axe handle to the referee, and then that's where the shenanigans got involved. That's where Don Callis came down and he handed Omega each world championship, and Omega just hit Pac with each one of his world championships. And then we saw him as he's going to hit Cassidy with the AEW world title. Cassidy was able to reverse it, hit his orange punch, and then as I believe he went for a roll-up, he was actually countered into another roll-up. 1, 2, 3. Kenny Omega, by the skin of his teeth, retains the AEW world title, but I don't think this is over. I think everyone looked great in this match. Cassidy didn't, and here's the thing, nobody looked weak, and that's the thing you were trying to accomplish. All three of these guys still have a gripe for the world title. I think Cassidy and Pac, you can still put them up against Omega at Fyter Fest or even All Out later down the line, and it could still be a viable match. And finally, our main event, Stadium Stampede. The Inner Circle took on the Pinnacle in a match where if the Inner Circle lost, they would be forced to disband. And we saw this really cool entrance by the Inner Circle. They came down from the top of the Jacksonville Jaguars Stadium, and on these lines or whatever. They were just lowered down, and it was really cool. Amazing visual. We also saw that the Pinnacle arrived in FTR's truck, which, yes, means a little less cool, but they're just fighting all around the arena, fighting throughout the stadium in Jacksonville Jaguar Stadium. One really cool spot is at one point, MJF and Jericho are fighting inside the stadium, and they end up going to the coach's office. And right there, you see Urban Meyer and Charlie Strong in the background. And as Jericho and MJF were fighting, Charlie Strong just starts throwing balls at Chris Jericho, like footballs at Chris Jericho, and Jericho starts chucking them at MJF's head. And then they just do this spot where Charlie Strong just keeps on giving him the footballs. And then they go on fighting, and they just cut to Urban Meyer and Charlie Strong, and they just both go, holy shit. So that was really cool. I thought that was really cool, tying in the Jacksonville Jaguars, and like, there's still people here. Another cool spot was when Santana and Ortiz went to go fight FTR. There was this this upper level club area where there was apparently people hanging out. There's a DJ, and that's where they went to go fight FTR. And when they get there, they each have a drink, and then they just start destroying the place. Like, tables go flying, people are going through tables, and then we see Tully Blanchard try to get involved and try to help out the FTR. But as that's happening, the DJ was revealed to be none other than Conan, who was also the manager of Santana and Ortiz when they were in LAX. So that was a really cool thing, and he stopped Tully Blanchard from getting involved. So, there was a fair fight. We saw Shawn Spears and Sammy Guevara go at it a lot in this match. They were fighting all over backstage. At one point, Shawn Spears was able to get Sammy down and handcuff him somewhere back in the backstage area. Jake Hager and Wardlow, we all know that's like one of the big dream matches we want to see in AEW. Is two big dudes just beating lumps out of each other, and that's what they were doing for a lot of this match. They threw each other through a wall, but in the end, Hager was able to powerbomb Wardlow into some, I believe there were crates off of a forklift. So that was cool. So they end up coming back out into Daly's place where the fans are. Chris Jericho actually hits a powerbomb, I believe, on MJF somewhere up in the rafters onto a table. So took him out of the match. It ended up being in the ring. Sammy Guevara one-on-one with Shawn Spears for the finishing sequence of the match. And it's kind of, this was, I think, a kind of a callback to Sammy Guevara. Obviously, he took the pinfall last year. And they kind of made him look so strong. It was Sammy Guevara's night. It was Sammy Guevara's match. And he was able to get the win on Shawn Spears, pin him 1-2-3 in 31-30. The Inner Circle won Stadium Stampede after losing last year, and on top of that, they get to stay together. I don't think this feud is over, not by a long shot. Look for another big match at All Out between these teams. That's been AEW Double or Nothing 2021. Our results. It was a great pay-per-view. Cannot wait to cover it more in depth tomorrow on Real Take Wrestle Talk with Trevor Sutton. In the meantime, I've been Omar from Real Take Sports, and I will see you next time.